Welcome back. Let's continue on building our backend. So at this point, we have lots of different ways we could go. We could work on, adding the libraries that we need, maybe doing some AWS resources. Since we're already playing with the serverless YAML file, I thought might be nice to actually make the changes here to create our DynamoDB table. So this is fairly boilerplate. I'm going to the top here, and I'm just going to paste in what I think we need. So let's it'll be something along the lines of this. And I'll explain this in just a moment. There we go. Hey, come on, Visual Studio. There we go. So this custom section basically allows us to define things that are used later in the file. So the first thing I need is a table name. And it'll be convenient to define it in one place and actually reference it in a couple of different places. The table name is going to consist of, well, some weird string followed by a dash and then nothing. So actually the table I want will be called portfolio. Okay, so what's this weird string about? Well, you'll probably notice the word stage in here a couple of times. Just to paraphrase what's going on here, if the user typed in a command line argument, said serverless deploy, and if he specified the stage in the options, then that's what this command does. It says, hey, if someone specified the stage in the options, please use that. Otherwise, look in the provider section and pull out this default stage that's been specified there. Right? So this section here is going to expand into a variable like dev or QA or staging or prod or whatever. And that's all good. So I do like, prefixing, the tables so that there's a separate dev table, QA table, prod table. That's just a convention. You don't need to do that. Anyway, so that's our table name. The next thing we want to do is, and I know I'm going to want it, so I'm going to add it now. I'd like to add an environment. I want to make an environment variable available to the Lambda function when it's running, so that code can find out this table name. That's kind of our bridge between this YAML file and our code. Is we actually say, hey, when this gets deployed, create a Lambda function and also make sure that it's got an environment variable set up with this table name. So let's try that out. I think I've got some code around here. Yeah, I got an example of this kind of thing. So what we need is under provider. So the provider section, by the way, this is stuff that's specific to AWS, or I should say specific to the provider. Specific to AWS, or if you're using Google Cloud Platform, it's going to be a little different, etc., etc. So this is also where our environment section can go. And in here, we can basically put an environment variable that we want to make available to our Lambda function. So once this is deployed, I'm expecting that our Lambda function will have an environment variable called portfolio. Did I spell it right? Yes. Portfolio table, and it'll be set to should be dev-portfolio. Cool. Okay. Now the real magic. Now we want to go and add an actual DynamoDB table. So the place to do this is in resources. Right? And in here, I'll say resources. This is my resources section. And what shall we say? We'll call this the, what do we want to call this? We want to call this the portfolio table. All right, cool so far. Let's grab something similar. So I'm just going to look over at another project I built not too recently, and we'll copy this. Good. and paste it in here. All right, and now I can talk through it. So first get all the indentation right. That looks right. Okay, so what are we saying here? We're saying, hey, the type of resource that's being created is a DynamoDB table. No surprise. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I want to define the primary and the partition key and the sort key. I don't need this field. Get rid of that. So yeah, we got a partition key and a sort key. And same thing down here. Here we specify that our partition key is a hash key, sort key is a range key. We'll maybe talk about the details of this a little later, but this is the way I like to set up a DynamoDB table. I encourage you to maybe do a little Googling on the DynamoDB table single table design pattern. Because believe it or not, when done correctly, you can store an entire database in a single table. So it's actually quite a nice design pattern, and I'm going to follow it here. This is not a complicated data model, but I'll use the design pattern here anyways. So next thing, this is my favorite billing mode. So there are different options in billing mode, but basically I choose pay per request because if you don't use it much, it's dirt cheap. And if you do use it a lot, it automatically scales. Your other option is kind of old school, where you have to estimate the maximum usage and possibly dynamically change that. So for me, there's no better option than pay per request. Honestly, if it's not used a lot, it's cheap. And finally, we specify our table name. So this is just a reference to that custom section up above, right? This saying, oh, that's the table name. So now we've got enough information that when I do a serverless deploy, I expect two things. I expect this table to be created in DynamoDB, and I also expect that our Lambda function is going to have an environment variable called portfolio table. And those are both things that we can check in the AWS console. So we'll do that. But before we move on, I realized not too long ago that when we did our last change, there's a lot of files here. There's a few files here. So what's happened is when we did our serverless deploy, it creates a hidden directory called Serverless, where it's basically creating some files that are, they're temporary in nature and they're getting copied up. And we don't care about any of this stuff for Git. So I'm just going to add these into our git ignore, the whole .serverless directory. So going back here to our project, thank you, I'm going to go into our git ignore. Oh, do I have a git ignore? No, I do not. So that's another thing I'm going to add. Let's add .git ignore. And we'll expand on this later. I know that eventually we want npm modules to be ignored. Might as well do that now. And I'm sure I could just grab another git ignore file. It's going to be similar to this, but I'll just do this right for now. And we definitely want to ignore our serverless directory. So server.serverless. Okay, once I save this, our file count went down. So now it says there's only 2 files that changed. We're now ignoring the entire .serverless directory because we don't care. It's not part of our source tree. Yeah, we do have some changes to serverless.yaml. So before we commit these changes, let's actually try it out. We're going to go over here and we're going to go serverless deploy. And once again, this is just a shortcut for serverless deploy stage dev. But we don't need to specify the stage dev because our default is the dev stage. So I'm just going to do serverless deploy. And I messed up something. Well. Okay, let's see what it says. US West 2. Oh, that's funny. 2 colons. Well, copy paste error. So let's go back to our serverless YAML. The portfolio table, that's the environment variable. Oh, look at that. Let's just get rid of that. I think that's right. Let's try it again. Nice. And I see we also got some deprecation warnings for stuff that need to be addressed. We may want to, we'll probably circle back and fix that up in a bit. Oh, I am seeing something now. Resource. Does not like that property. Oh, that's because I just glanced back in another project. It's supposed to be resources. Okay. I will honestly say with this stuff, it's kind of, you learn it once, you do it again and again. So this is the pattern. It's resources, tables, etc., etc. So let's just save that and try our deploy one more time. Third time's a charm, right? Looking a little better. So Serverless has already kind of scanned our project, didn't find any problems. It's bundling it up, and now it's shipping it off. The actual steps are it bundles it up, it sends it off to a bucket in S3, which is one of the AWS services, and then it tells AWS to run CloudFormation to actually create my stack. So let's just wait for that. And when it's done, we're expecting 2 things. We're expecting the Lambda function should have an environment variable, and we are expecting our DynamoDB table to be created. And I guess one other thing is we also, we created a CloudFormation stack, so that would be a nice thing to look into the AWS console and confirm that it got created. Okay, so there we go. That seems to have worked. So now we are going to go back to AWS console, and let's go to our Lambda function first. So one thing about the AWS console, there's always a search bar up here that makes it real easy to switch between different things. Oh, and I happen to notice that actually this window here already is in our Lambda function. So I'll just click on this. I'm going to go. Let's see, I want to refresh this now that this has been changed. So I'll just click the refresh button. Okay. That's a little better. Okay, so I click the refresh button, log back into the AWS console. And what was I looking for? Oh yes, we want to see if it also created an environment variable for us. Try and remember where that is. I think that's under configuration. Let's find out. Environment variables. Look at that. Portfolio table is dev-portfolio. Not too bad. Let's go over to DynamoDB now. Here's DynamoDB. Let's do a quick, let's look at the tables. Oh, in this account, I've only got the one table, so that's good. Dev portfolio, that's exactly what we're expecting. The partition key is called PK, and the sort key is called SK. So once again, these keys are based on us using this single table design pattern, and we'll talk about them a little later. But basically, we now have a DynamoDB table where we can, we can add and remove records as needed. Currently, it's empty. Pretty soon, we'll fill it with data, probably big old 3 or 4 records. So that's the plan. Now let's see. There were three things I mentioned though. There was this. And this, and oh yes, CloudFormation. So now I'm going to go up here, and we're going to go to CloudFormation. So I just wanted to show you this. It's not important. Basically, when you use serverless, it actually, behind the scenes, is creating a CloudFormation stack. And here it is right here, portfolio dev. Interestingly, if we take a look in here, we can also see, oh, here's my previous little proof of concept project where I did it using Django, Elastic Container Service, etc., etc. So that's another stack that I could, it's a stack of resources. Later, when I'm ready, I'll probably take this and I'll probably remove this. So I want to, I want to remove all of those resources with that project. But for now, Dev Portfolio, this is our Dev Portfolio project. And if you're interested, you can see all the resources that got created down here, and etc., etc., etc. So, thank you for joining me for this step, and I'll see you in the next step. Thank you.